With Congress facing another potential government shutdown, Americans across the political spectrum have urged both parties to set aside differences and find a compromise. Many people also believe that, if Robert Mueller produces significant evidence of wrongdoing by Donald Trump, Republicans in Congress should vote to impeach him. Will arguments to do the right thing persuade lawmakers? Don't hold your breath. Such exhortations are rarely heeded by politicians, because the structural incentives of the institution usually trump policy considerations. People often urge members of Congress to take positions that reflect arguments for the public good without regard to electoral or party consequences. They point to so-called profiles in courage, like Edmund Ross, a Kansas Republican who cast the deciding vote to acquit President Andrew Johnson, a Democrat, in 1868, or Marjorie Margolis Mevinsky, a Democratic representative from a conservative district in Pennsylvania, who voted for the Clinton budget in 1993. But those instances are rare. Most of the time, members of Congress do want to pass good public policy, but they also have two other important goals: re-election and increased power in the legislature. These goals offer a road map to the incentives that shape their decision-making. When the incentives don't align, members face problems. In these cases, re-election usually wins out, not least because it is a prerequisite for any other goal. Indeed, profiles in courage are so rare because they routinely cost legislators. Both Edmund Ross and Marjorie Margolis Mevinsky lost their re-election bids. Many argue, however, that members should be willing to risk their jobs for the public good, especially on matters of conscience or morality. Historically, some politicians have done this, perhaps most famously Sam Houston of Texas, when he refused to support slavery's expansion or secession from the Union, which cost him first his Senate seat and then his governorship. But giving up one's job for a public policy is tougher than it appears. Consider whether you would give up your current job and likely any future in your current career field to pass one specific public policy. Still, some people might be willing to sacrifice their job for a policy. But even then, there's a catch: very few will be happy to lose their job to not get the policy. That is, members who sacrifice their seats to do the right thing might find that the policy is never enacted, or that they are replaced by someone who repeals the policy. Some House Democratic members attributed their re-election losses in 2010 to a risky House vote for cap-and-trade climate legislation championed by leadership. The bill was never taken up by the Senate. The tension between the public good and re-election also highlights the dual role of members of Congress. They are national policy makers but local representatives. When they are criticized for favoring re-election over the public good, it is often a criticism of putting local concerns over national ones. Faced with a policy that helps the national economy but costs local jobs, many members will feel obligated to defend their constituents, and oppose the policy. Congressmen routinely oppose trade deals on these grounds, and some blue state Republicans, in the debate on the recent tax bill, faced opposition at home to altering deductions for state and local taxes. In practice, this local incentive tends to distort public policy toward parochialism and away from the national good. But this is neither irrational nor inherently bad. Even if you believe national interests should take priority, it doesn't follow that local interests should be ignored. Complicating this, most citizens do not have consistent opinions about when each role should take precedence. So asking members to do the right thing often means asking them to risk their job for an important policy, but just this once. Even worse, determining the right thing is largely subjective. In most cases, it just means a position I feel strongly about. The third goal of members increasing their power within Congress is intrinsically linked to partisanship. Power in both the House and Senate is structured along party lines, with party caucuses holding gatekeeping authority over committee seats, chairmanships, and chamber leadership positions. Members can parlay skills like fundraising prowess or issue expertise into increased power, but in most cases they need to please party leaders to improve their standing. When all three of their incentives align, members have little to consider. If a position is strongly supported by constituents, pleases party leaders, and is judged by the member to be good public policy, then taking that position is a no-brainer. The most difficult choices members make concern supporting the party position on issues that cut against the preferences of their constituents or district interests. This may take the form of voting with the party on high-profile legislation. For example, the Democrats in 2010 passed the Affordable Care Act even though it was obvious the votes were going to cost them seats in Congress. Sometimes members judge that siding with the party and against their constituents actually best serves their district. If a member can gain a lot of favor with the leadership while mildly going against her district, his increased power will probably benefit the district in the long term. It's still not easy to go home and say, "No, I didn't vote with you, but this is really going to line me up for a chairmanship, which will be great for us in 5 years." This is why developing trust with constituents is so important. If constituents believe the member has their best interests at heart, they will give him the benefit of the doubt. So critics asking Republican members to sharply break from President Trump are essentially asking them to choose a subjective vision of the public good over their re-election and party power incentives. Mr. Trump is reasonably popular in most Republican districts, and while Republican leaders have neither asked for nor expect members to refrain from all criticism of the president, they would likely frown upon, for instance, a member calling for Mr. Trump's impeachment. Conversely, departing members of Congress are freed from both the re-election and party power incentives. It's no surprise that Senators Bob Corker and Jeff Flake have been among the most vocal critics of the administration. Neither trustees of the national good nor automaton reflectors of district opinion can wholly satisfy our desire for Congress to fulfill both of its roles. It is healthy and useful for citizens to urge representatives to prioritize the public good over other incentives. It is equally healthy for members to be skeptical when weighing such demands against competing concerns in their decision-making.